So I'm really grateful that you could find the time to talk to me because I love your work. I mean, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks.
I mean, I guess now we're just doing it formally. I'd like to introduce everybody to Ivan. He is the creator of the nuclear war simulator, which is by far the best tool out there. Certainly, it beats some of the other stuff I've seen. The more video gamey stuff, or even although it's useful for a single city explosion nuke map, but yours takes the whole 9 yards. So I guess can you let everybody know a little bit about your background? I know you've been trained in nuclear engineering, is it, or nuclear physics?
No, actually not. So thank you very much for the introduction.
Yeah.
So my background is in physics, but it is solid state physics.
Solid state physics.
Solid state physics. So I did my PhD working with lasers, semiconductors, optics, electronics, but also doing a lot of simulations. But my interest in physics dates back to my childhood because I grew up in Semipalatinsk. This is a city in Kazakhstan, which is about 150 kilometers away from the biggest nuclear weapons test site of the Soviet Union. So there is a big culture surrounding this topic in the city, and the city is dealing with the consequences of the nuclear weapons testing. So it is always in the newspapers. There is a big section of the library dedicated to this topic. So I was kind of following this topic since I was a child and trying to learn everything I could on it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's what sort of like drove your interest to, or was it kind of always in the back of your mind that you would do a nuclear war simulation, or there was some event or something that sort of went, "Bing, I really need to do this"?
I didn't know it always, but somewhere at the end of the PhD thesis, when I got a bit more time on my hands and I did a couple of simulations, I realized there is no publicly available simulation of a nuclear conflict out there. So there are a couple of games like DEF CON or Civilization, but they all treat nuclear weapons in a completely unrealistic way. And there was one game by Paradox, East versus West, which went in a little bit more realistic direction, but it never was released. So I decided to start tinkering on my own, started to trying to create mods for existing games, but didn't get very far because of the limitations. And then I decided, okay, I will try to do it from scratch. And then at the beginning, I was mostly trying to make a game, but then I realized I'm much more enjoying creating the simulation and just adding details to the simulation. And so in the current state, it is a sandbox, so many details like delivery systems, humanitarian consequences. It's not much of a game. It's like the UI is like a game, but there are no goals, at least yet.
Right. Well, in a way, it kind of makes sense because I don't know about you, but I feel that essentially there is no sane goal in fighting a nuclear war. Even the winners lose, so first strike, because I was reading Ellsberg's Doomsday Machine, a very good book. He's talking about even how they're modeling it. Like they would think, oh well, if we only lose a few million people, that's acceptable. And in fact, even I think Curtis LeMay might have said that, or one of his people on his staff says, as long as there's 2 Americans left alive and only 1 Russian, we win.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme. Yeah.
So that's not a sane goal. Sorry. Yeah. So
No,
that's
no, you're right. This is one of the reasons why it is not a game, at least yet, because I want to keep it realistic. But on the other hand, if you want to keep it realistic, then it's very difficult to create goals. Like most of the time, the goal is to prevent nuclear war.
Yeah.
From happening, like to keep stability somehow. But this is a very boring game where nothing happens.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is. I mean, I remember that there was that movie War Game in the States about that kid hacker hacked into the system. Yeah. But yeah, I sense the computer side, there's no winning this. So the best strategy is to not fight one at all. So, I mean, that was the only good part about it, was that conclusion. But yeah, so so it is. I mean, and we need that simulation. I mean, I think as an educational tool. But just to kind of wake everybody that it's not like, it's interesting that I see there's almost like two polar opposite attitudes, around, nuclear war, no biggie, it's just our missiles will shoot them all down, anything, because the Russian nukes don't work, yada yada, and you just have to stay inside inside your house for a few days, everything's okay. Versus the people, there's going to be Carl Sagan's worst case nuclear winter is going to kill 99% of the population of the Northern Hemisphere, and 5 billion people overall, and so therefore, there's no even point even thinking about it. So let the governments do whatever they want to do, there's no point thinking about it. Rather than a situation where you think about it because, hey, well, this is bad, but it's not the end of humanity. Therefore, we should work to try and stop it, or at least mitigate the effects of it as best one can. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah. So, to be honest, I don't know how even to prepare. Right. So you can prepare maybe a little bit.
Well, I was thinking more like what Switzerland does. I mean, they have fallout shelters for pretty well most of their population, if not all of it. And Russia, to a lesser extent, built a lot during the era. In North America, U.S., Canada, England, there's nothing. So what you're going to end up with is a Threads-like scenario. I don't know if you've seen the old British movie Threads.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
multiple times, sure.
Yeah, that sort of scenario.
It's very depressing.
It is very well, actually, but it makes sense. I mean, I know I've run your simulation. I mean, England ends up looking like a glass-lined parking lot unless you're living in Wales or somewhere in the Scottish Highlands. You're toast. When I've run the mad scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the scenario. How many nuclear weapons actually survive? How many reach the targets?
I know. I've seen that.
How they will be distributed over US and Europe. So they're actually, depending on where you are, you can survive it. But
you can. But I mean, in certain places, like I said, I mean, for example, like in England, if you're in Wales, I've run several scenarios. Wales pretty well untouched. Most of Scotland, other than up north where the NATO naval base is pretty well untouched. Area around London, forget it. Same thing here in Canada. If you're outside of some of the the really big cities, our target cities, you're pretty well okay. Same thing in England. I mean, in the States, lots of it's going to be untouched too. Although it's one of the things that I actually did a little bit of a video on it. I'm going to do more of it. I think it's bizarre that we're going to put all our missile silos in our prime agricultural area. I mean, America has so much desert; they could have put it in.
That's an interesting choice.
Well, I guess maybe it was range because that's closer, because it's near the Canadian border, so it's about as close as you can get in order to lob one over to Russia. So maybe that extra 1,000 miles made a difference in the early days, and they just sort of kept on doing it.
Yeah, but I think the choice is, do you put it in the fields or do you put it close to cities, close to coasts? And also you want to put them far away from the coast so they're not
Right.
destroyed quickly by from submarines. So I think this was the thinking.
Yeah, I guess that was the thinking. But I mean, there are parts of where they're far away from the cities and far away from the coast, like, parts of the deserts in Nevada, for example,
Mhm.
Yeah, but anyways, it just seemed like
I mean,
it just seemed to be a little odd choice, especially if you're thinking, okay, as far as that would be very much a contribution to nuclear famine, because you're
yeah.
radiating your prime agricultural land, killing most of your farmers and destroying most of the farm equipment that basically is from basically the breadbasket of the world. So, but anyways, that's just fine. But getting back, circling back to the simulation. So, I mean, I'm fascinated by it, how you came up with the AI, where you found the data, the open source data to create a simulation that really feels like it's on the mark.
So your question is about the AI or about the data on
Well, I guess maybe we'll
the
do it
simulation, or
right. Let's start
both?
with the data. Let's start with the data, and then we can move on to the AI.
Yeah, so the data is a collection of all kinds of data on the internet, because a lot of the stuff is just publicly available. For example, population density. There are databases of population density. There are databases of all kinds of objects like power plants, hospitals. It's all out there. There's OpenStreetMaps. There are dedicated databases with capacities, with the types of power plants. It's all out there. You just need to convert the data and put it into your simulation. There is actually so much more that can be used, which I don't use yet, but just because I don't have the time. But it can be. It's like you want to reproduce the real world in the simulation, and there is endless detail that you can add. There is a lot of data out there. It just has to be added to the simulation. And so one of the latest data layers was the building height, where until now I was estimating the protection factor from radiation just from population density. Saying that, okay, there are rural areas, urban areas, and depending on population density, there is a different distribution factor, distribution of the protection factors.
Right.
But now there is actually a layer of average building heights, so it gives a more accurate information about which kind of buildings do you have there, so which kind of protection can you find.
Right. I mean, New York has a
areas.
higher building average than, say, Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then for the effects of the delivery systems, there is also a lot of data out there. So for the effects, there is this GitHub, the repository by Edward Geist, for all kinds of effects like thermal radiation, overpressure. So this is what I started with. And for the fallout, the VISIC 10 fallout model, it was actually, I would say, seminal to this simulation. If Edward Geist didn't put it out there, I think the barrier to create this would be very high for me. So it was really an enabling project.
Cool.
And then I got really great support from Sebastian Philippe on the high split fallout model, which is much more accurate. And for the objects like delivery systems or military bases, for the military bases, there is this project also on GitHub of different objects that will be possibly targeted in a Russian strike in the US. So a lot of military bases. And for the arsenals, there are regular publications on which countries have what kind of arsenals, often with locations. So if somebody, if you have time, you can put all this data into the simulation.
I know, and it's really, really cool. And I was actually pleasantly surprised, as far as the detail of that. For example, when I've run the simulations, a nuke goes off in Victoria, British Columbia. Well, just outside Victoria, in the suburb of Esquimalt is where the Canadian Pacific Fleet is based. So any sane Russian strike, we want to take that out because there's a significant anti-submarine warfare flotilla out of that thing. Our frigates are based out of there. So some of them are going to be out at sea, but some of them are going to be still in port. And you want to get rid of those. And you also want to get rid of their stash of, anti-submarine weapons. And, so they can't re-equip, refuel, So obviously Victoria would be a prime target. North Bay, Ontario, that's where the blue hole is, where, the NORAD command center, big command center, just outside my hometown. I mean, these are targets, and they would go. And it's very sobering when you could see that, And so that's cool. So really some really good solid sources of information there. And the AI, that's also fascinates me how that handled.
Yeah, so the AI is actually super simple. This is the side of the simulation that needs to be developed. So right now the AI is just something to interact with. It's not really realistic, so there is no very detailed simulation of the command and control or anything. It's just you have this president figures. You can have multiple, and they have a behavior, how they react to the situation. They can initiate an attack on themselves, so you can react on it, or another AI, so some spontaneous escalation can happen, or they will react to being nuked, depending on how many detonations occur on their territory. They will react proportionally, over proportionally, or decide to launch an all-out attack. Or they can react to early warning systems. So there is radar, satellites, and they will communicate what they detect to this to the AI, and the AI can then decide, launch on warning or not. And there is a setting, so you can tune the AI, so you can kind of play with it a little bit, but it's not very detailed yet.
Yeah, but it certainly is fascinating, and I would love to see the decision tree. I know when I played the European escalation scenario and set all the AIs on, it really felt like similar to, I don't know if you've read the works of like On Thermonuclear War and the other works by Kuhn. He was in strategist back to 60s, but he talked about escalate to de-escalate as a tactic. And you read The Doomsday Machine by Ellis, he talks about, they were always talking about that stuff. And the fact it gave you a sense that there was a certain sense of inevitability, because for the political cost of just allowing it to happen without re-escalating another notch up, there's, somebody, because remember, sometimes these guys are not exactly, maybe a bit, and I'm talking about everybody. I mean, it takes a lot of willing to sacrifice your career or your ego in order to say, okay, they fired a nuke, we fired a nuke back. Okay, now the day is saying, well, they hit back, we gotta show them we're serious. Let's fire 3 at them just to show that we are serious, so they'll de-escalate and stand down. And then 3 hit there, and they say, well, we can't allow that. We gotta fire 5 back, and before you know it, it's we're off to the races.
And there's also that's more or less the thinking behind the AI right now.
Yeah, and you also the concept of well, use it or lose it. I mean, okay, which is I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. You've probably done far more research in this area than I have, but to me, I feel that a pure counterforce strike is a bit of an oxymoron because I have some of my forces targeted for counter value. If I don't get off those missiles off the ground, I don't have the option of counter value down the road. So I better launch everything now, rather than having leaving some of my missiles in the tubes.
Yeah, depending on what kind of system, especially for the ICBMs. That's
what I meant. The ground base. That's what the danger of the ground base, because they have like limited survivability. It's not like the old days where a nuke could be off 2 or 3 miles, and but nowadays like.
Yeah, that's actually why a lot of people are arguing to eliminate this ground-based ICBMs because they are like the lightning rod. That you have to launch them if you don't want to lose them.
Well, exactly, and I always felt that a submarine force is probably more ideal. The newer submarines are very hard to detect. You can escort them, but attack submarines to protect them, and they can just sort of disappear and reappear somewhere else. And it gives you time to take a deep breath and think this out, rather than OMG, there's 900 missiles heading for my silos. I gotta get all my stuff off the ground now. So I argue for the same thing too. I mean, if you're going to have a deterrence force, keep it submarine based, like the way France and because I think France and England in themselves, their 4 subs each are more than enough deterrents. All you need is one of those things to survive, and you can just lay waste to the to the opposing country.
Yeah, but then you start developing different scenarios, and people want more.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to ensure that there's no really survivable. So who knows what happens to the subs?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You can. I mean, but I guess until they have spaceborne. I was watching The Expanse. They have their missiles up in orbit somewhere, just to fire down at each other. So there it is. Anyways, but that's actually a very good point. I mean, I guess the best bet is to have none of these things, none of the above. But there it is. This is the world we live in. So as far as getting back to simulation. I know you were taught. I remember hearing that there was going to be, you're going to work on the climate model to sort of simulate a nuclear fall or a nuclear winter. Is that still in the works, or?
So right now the model is pretty simple. So it does use the relatively simple model where it calculates the amount of soot from burning cities depending on the population density. So you can estimate the amount of burnable material from the population density, and then there is a conversion factor to the soot that enters the higher levels of the atmosphere. And then you can take the results that are available, that are out there, and you can estimate the average amount of cooling. So right now this is very simple, but it can be expanded. So there are easy ways to expand it, like just add other details like precipitation, ozone layer loss. It is probably possible to interpolate how many people will be endangered in terms of nutrition security. So these are the low-hanging fruits, how it can be expanded. But it would also be interesting to kind of integrate it with an atmospheric simulation, similar to what is now done with the high-split model, and see if this can lead to a much slower, but also maybe much more detailed simulation where you can have regional cooling, so you can really see if the war is happening mostly in the northern hemispheres, and how much soot will leak to the southern hemisphere. You can do all kinds of detailed distributions of crops, how they react to low temperatures, low precipitation, all this kind of details. So there is a lot of stuff that can be included with enough time.
Yeah, because that is the issue, of course. Speaking of which, I guess you talked about sort of casualties. I was also fascinated how I guess the model you use for calculating casualties, say 3.5 million Canadians have died and 34 million Americans have died. So how are you looking at just the sort of immediate casualties, or trying to calculate casualties from radiation sickness?
So right now it is only the short-term casualties, not including cancer rates, or not including any delayed casualties from, let's say, infrastructure collapse or anything, or from the nuclear winter, because it's just too complicated.
Yeah, got it.
But yeah, it is probably possible to include long-term casualties from radiation, at least, because these are more predictable.
Right. I think because we got information from Hiroshima and Nagasaki that we can, look at, I guess.
Yeah, well, there were enough accidents
Chernobyl
to get the data. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering because one of the things I've also seen, the infrastructure is interesting. It's like for example, the United States has a couple thousand burn beds. Okay, what happens? And a lot of these things aren't urban centers. Okay, well, kind of you're going to basically devolve to the hospital scene in threads, basically. And how many people who are otherwise survivable would survive their injuries are now going to pass because of how many hospitals got in and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's so much you can do. Do you have can you have a sense of what you're going to work on next with the simulator?
Or let's see. So there is no strictly defined roadmap. Right now, I'm focusing on fixing all the bugs that are out there, some difficulties with the UI. And then I think I have to focus on making the simulation more engaging, because right now it is a pure simulation, and it is not, for a lot of people, it is just boring. So it is like a scientific simulation. So if you are interested, if you're already interested in this topic, then you will have fun with it. You will find it interesting. But people who don't know much about the topic, they often find it very abstract, or don't know what to do. So I have to work more on creating some kind of guidance, more tutorials, maybe scenarios with predefined goals, so people have something to do to make it more engaging.
Right. I know, like, I'm fascinated. Obviously, I'm fascinated by the topic, so it engages me definitely. But yeah, more tutorials, and because I'm a bit of a geek that way, more tutorials would be nice. Because I still have sometimes been struggling trying to place, trying to put persons, like, I'm trying to put myself and my wife in our basement. And I've been in Vancouver, so I was just kind of going, okay. Or even sort of like scenarios, given how much versus evacuating versus. Well, I mean, you have nice little set pieces for that, but just to try poor wing it, or maybe almost turn it. Maybe that would be more engaging, so people can play themselves in how they.
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But it's awesome. It's still this awesome tool, and I've already used it. I'm going to use it some more myself. And also, maybe on the UI too. If this, so is there because from the damage on the city, when you actually zoom in on the city and get that, where's the? I haven't been able to find the legend for what those colors mean.
It is in the visualization settings. On the right, there is a monitor button, and then like a palette.
Yeah.
Then you can see the legend, and you can also change the values. So you can select the overpressure and thermal radiation thresholds.
Okay, thank you. I just I hadn't been able to find that, so that's good. So everybody knows that's where you go to do that. So cool. Okay, I guess we're going to have this. We talked about being more conversational. Now I'll turn it over to you. What do you like to ask me and chat about with me?
Yeah. So mostly, I would like to know, what do you think is useful right now, and what do you think is missing out there? So what kind of visualizations do you think are not out there on the internet that you would find interesting to create videos or to educate the public?
Well, I think several things. I mean, that was the point of one of the key underlying themes of Threads is the destruction of the infrastructure, the interconnection of civilization, and what happens if those interconnections are broke. So, I mean, you can get some high level, but I like to talk about that. I mean, the fact that the collapse of the healthcare system, the collapse of supply chain. What are the implications of that is one thing. Also, maybe more like fine-grained visualizations, as far as, actually they probably are out there somewhere, like, try and calculate the protection factor of, say, of a basement, a large high-rise, or a parkade and stuff like that. And maybe more fine-grained detail, like, you hear about, like, well, I guess maybe you can to a degree, but there seems to be a little finer grain detail on the basically the spread of fallout depending on the wind speed and distribution. Probably there are some out there, I would suspect. Just
and like how the fallout is spreading over time.
Yeah, like it's almost like it's like you hear, oh yeah, well, in about 10 or 15 minutes, the stuff is going to fall if you're close by. Well, what happens if I'm 100 miles away? When's my danger zone there and stuff like? I guess it depends on the wind. Also depends on the weather. Like it's got climate. Like for example, like I live on the west coast here. And it's very wet. I live in a temperate rainforest. I mean, if you exploded a nuke over Vancouver, say in early December, nothing's going to burn. I mean, beyond the flight, because everything has been soaked after weeks of rain. But if you explode it off during the summer, during our forest fire season, wildfire season, you're going to torch the city. You're going to torch most of everything. Anything within the thermal, it's just going to take a spark to set up all the forests around us. It's just be that sort of thing. But also it affects it. I mean, like, if you exploded a nuke in November, and say you ground burst on the Vancouver International Airport, because it's a big enough airport to the runways can support bombers, so I mean there's always a chance there. You're going to get in November, you're going to get black rain, the radioactive rainfall coming in. And so those things, but then again, maybe I'm getting too much in minutia there, but But certainly, but the main interest is impact of infrastructure. I mean, a collapse of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why, for example, Vancouver. And you notice, most of the time, the AI gets it right. It explodes a nuke over Vancouver Harbor because it's the second largest port on the west coast of North America. It'd be huge for supplying. If you lost San Diego and San Francisco and Los Angeles, I'm basically going to be supplying out of Vancouver. I mean, if you're trying to say, especially if you were looking at a war with China, for example, We're trying to supply a campaign over there. What it kind of gets it right. Now, but what happens if you destroy? Well, first of all, it would be like all our grain elevators along the port. I mean, so you got this massive quantity of food that's going to be going up in smoke. There'd be no way, and because of the nature, it'd be, that would have impact on the whole world. So, but that's very complex. I think you would need we need a team of dedicated people and enough funding to basically everybody can quit their day jobs and just do that.
Oh yeah, that's very complicated.
Yeah, but I mean, but still, I mean, as far as that goes, but yeah, I mean, again, getting more down on personal, I guess, make it maybe interesting. Actually, no, I think I'm pretty good there too. It's just I just need to figure out how to place my people a little bit better. Yeah, maybe just a tutorial on that would probably help. Yeah, a really good one.
I think there is.
Well, there's something. Okay.
I think there is. You should take a look in the tutorials.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So yes, so sorry about that. Anyway, so do you have any other things that you want to talk to me about? Ask me about?
Yeah. So, what is the general approach do you want to take on your channel? So what I find interesting is that you often take some existing materials like my simulation or nuke map or this video of New York, and you use it and as like a visualization or some reference to something people know, and you explain the background, the details to people. So what is your approach that you want to use?
Well, that's a good, strong one. Obviously, I want to base everything as much as possible on, factual information or a good simulation that's a trustworthy simulation, like both yours and Nuke Map is. And also, sometimes I want to make comments on stuff. I mean, like interesting, like the New York thing. I did two versions of the first version. Wasn't as good as the second version. The second version is the one I now have up. It's been up for a while now. Maybe that's the one you saw. And they added this commercial. And the thing is, of course, to be, as I say, to be terrible, I only had 90 seconds. But, I some of the, folks on the internet have dissed it, like especially the guys who build bunkers. And I wanted to point out what are they saying that's right, but then elaborate on that, to just because also, it can make it more minimized. Oh, I just go inside, you're going to be okay. Well, yeah, it depends what inside is and stuff like that. So I use it. So sometimes I'll say, okay, on that one I confirm. Okay, this is what they're saying, right? But you also need to know this, this, and this. So that's part of it. So, I mean, commentary on existing material. I mean, I'm actually, I get, of course, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, bulletin, and there's there's a really nice little article on the last one on hypersonics, and destabilization. So I may do something on that, but also people request things. I have noticed certain trends. People are really interested in the expedient survival stuff I do. And then the next thing that everybody's interested in is on risks. I mean, my most popular short video has been the ones on Fallout and actually finding the most popular one has been finding expedient shelter. Like, when you're going to work, because even if you actually did go out and invest in a big bomb shelter, are you just going to live there? Are you ever going? What happens if you've gone downtown to buy a pair of shoes and then all of a sudden your phone goes, meh, there it is, incoming, just like they did that false alarm in Hawaii. All of a sudden, OMG. And yeah, being sort of a kind of a situational awareness as I drive to work every day or to where I go shopping, I'll keep an eye. Like, if my alarm went off and I had like maybe 10 or 15 minutes to find shelter, where would I go? Yeah, and so that one was very popular. The
Ah,
second
cool.
most, the second most popular one. I mean, yeah, essentially, the parkades are your friend. Deep parkades, subways, basements of large buildings that look like they would survive. As far as like the quick and easy ones that way. And then the next one that was most popular was my short video on "Are You Feeling Lucky," which was contradicting some of these articles. You see, the Russian nukes won't work.
Oh, yeah.
They do get off the ground. We'll shoot them down. And of course, the trouble is that if you do your research, you find they report, well, they look at these tires on that Russian vehicle in Ukraine, corruption, blah, blah, blah. So I go look, well, how about, for the first, there's a similar problems in NATO forces too. The F-35 has got 54% operational readiness rate. That's almost half of them can't fly at any given time. 4 of the 22 Abrams tank battalions America has, are basically not considered fit for combat because they're below 70% readiness. And of course, they have the metal testing on the nuclear submarines and the coating testing too. So there's plenty of corruption and incompetence and stuff like that on the NATO side. But nobody ever says, oh yeah, the NATO missiles won't work. I mean, that the Minutemen won't work. They'll work. Just like the SS-18s will work. The Ohios will work, just like the Foxtrot 3s will work. I mean, everything will get off the ground. And people sort of like also challenge the fact that the American missile defenses aren't as good as some people like to think. There's only 44 GMDs, and they're designed to go after simple ICBMs with very simple countermeasures like what the North Koreans have. I don't think they would do well against a Yars or a Samat at all. And besides, they're all on, they're mostly in Alaska and a few in Vanderbilt, So that one's popular too, because people were interested. And I used that old Clint Eastwood quote, "Are you feeling lucky? Are you willing to bet your life that none of this stuff is going to work?" And then I've actually turned that into an article, which is going to be hopefully be published this fall in the Journal of Civil Defense. That's from the American Civil Defense Association, which I add. And also, if you also want confirmation that that is a myth, that they won't work, look at how America and NATO acts. They act like Russia has a credible, nuclear deterrence. Therefore, Russia does have a clear, because these guys would know. If it was nothing, they would be acting differently. You would have an no-fly zone over the Ukraine. There'd be they might even have already committed NATO troops overtly in there. But they know that that Russia has the button and the button works.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there are people with a lot of following on Twitter, who are propagating this idea that this and this, only 20% of Russian missiles will reach the target, something like this. Like this will fail, it's all corruption and not working.
But haven't they done the calculation? Even if only 20% of Russia's missiles make it, it's going to be tens of millions of dead and dying. Devastation like you wouldn't believe. I guess if you want to simulate that, let's simulate a nuclear war between China and America, because China roughly has 20% of the nuclear missile capacities of what Russia has. Maybe I think that maybe China has just under 400. Russia's probably around 1,600, 1,700. Anyways, but roughly it would be seen like if you did a strike with 20% of the missile capacity of Russia, there would still be it would be horrific. Heck, just one getting through could ruin your day if that one is the one targeted your town. And that's how I ended. So there's a lot of interest in survival, and there's a lot of interest in risk, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on primarily. I've just, decided to ditch the activism because it can create a barrier, as you pointed out, to the message, the rest of the message. I guess because I'm old enough to actually have protested, being in band and anti-Vietnam War protests in my teens. And this was a little left over. But I mean, sometimes kind of have to. I mean, when you talk about risks, I think one of the great risks is leadership. I feel that on both sides, we don't have the caliber of leadership that we had during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, Putin and Biden are not Khrushchev and Kennedy as far as the intellect and the self-restraint that those two. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I cannot really judge on that. So until now, I have actually seen a lot of restraint. On the US side, despite the pressure of no-fly zone, there's no direct involvement, and weapons deliveries are gradual, very gradual. So the slicing of the escalation salami. It's
fair enough.
Also on the Russian side, there is a lot of talk about nuclear weapons, but not much action that is actually visible. And even, I think, even transferring some of nuclear weapons to Belarus doesn't really change anything.
Right. Yeah, it's just sort of, shuffling the deck, so to speak. Yeah, you have a good point there. I was just, I sort of got thinking that way because that was when I was reading why the doomsday clock was moved to 90 seconds. They talked about leadership as one of the issues. So I was just sort of kind of following up on that. But certainly.
But yeah, that would be one other question I would like to ask. So what is your approach to balance providing educational content and activism? So your channel is, I would say it is educational. So your videos are very detailed and educational, but also in the title, you say anti-nuclear war channel. So what is your approach to this?
Well, the activism is, I believe it's universal in the sense of that, I mean, I'm primarily focusing on educational, but I'm hoping out of education comes an awareness that in all nuclear powers, not just the West, because it only takes one to make war, so to speak. Basically, I don't know if I can, probably the odds of me reaching a Russian audience are fat, slim, and none. But I like to think that both sides, everybody should be protesting, should try and get back to the treaties we had, because now we've torn up all these treaties, try and reestablish, a START treaty and intermediate range treaty, all these treaties like that. They try and get back to that sort of thing. Trying to scale back. I mean, that if it's unrealistic to ever think, the day will come and when there is no nuclear weapons, only if some benign space aliens came out there and they neutralized them all. But if we can try and scale back the number, at least it will not be enough to still have these guys will still have their deterrence, but the effects of a global full-on nuclear war would not be as catastrophic. Having tried and mitigate that. So maybe awareness, and also out here, I know that the American, the Civil Defense Association, one of their big things to try to get awareness is the fact that we're worse off than we've ever been for civil defense here in North America compared to, back in the 60s. They had identified buildings with a protection factor of 10 or more and put the little fallout sign there and salted away some supplies and stuff like that. Now there's nothing. Sort of that awareness of just, okay, maybe we need to lobby for better protection for the population the way Switzerland has. Maybe, hey, let's try and lobby to get those treaties back in place to try and limit the number of these things. Because now with with Russia's suspension of START, there's nothing to prevent both Russia and the United States from uploading their existing missiles. They can quickly increase, almost double their warhead capacity by pulling stuff out of storage and sticking them on. Like, Triton missiles can hold 8, and most of them only have, I think 3 or so. The Minutemen can hold 3 warheads, and most of them only have 1. I mean, and same the the Russian missiles too. They can just take the warheads out of storage and pile them on. Within a few months, they can be literally double the number of warheads out there. So try to work towards the treaties that limited these things. That's as far as activism goes. I'm being a realist about that, but I'm focusing less on that. Other than maybe part of the education will make people aware enough that they will start getting worried again. I feel that we're also well overdue for another Threads movie or another Day After movie, the American equivalent, just to get people to think about it.
Yes, that's something I find very unfortunate, that this kind of movies are not being produced anymore, because the topic is very important and very interesting. The Day After was the most watched movie in the history of television. People
and Threads did well
watch.
too. Fine too,
Yeah.
Although Thatcher tried to stop it, well, I'm actually working on basically I was working on both a novel and a screenplay called Cassandra, which is actually supposed to be about that, both everything leading up to the war and then the war itself and the aftermath. Cassandra being this person who tries to warn against increasing escalation while her husband is fueling the fires. They're both like big, major social influencers online sort of thing. But anyway, and then of course the aftermath. So that's why I started getting, I first encountered your simulation, because I was thinking, okay, well, I got to just look what this is going to look like. And, and then I started thinking about that, your simulation, start thinking about the whole thing. And at first, my awareness of it is I grew up during the Cold War. I was 8 when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. I remember all these ducking under my desk drills at school, because I lived in a town called North Bay, Ontario. Now, at the time, that had 3 major targets. It had the NORAD bunker, big bunker, Northern Command war control center called the Blue Hole, which is, and then they had the Beaumont missile base. Those were nuclear tipped SAMs they had back in the day for breaking up Russian bomber formations. Then there was the actual interceptor base, and the town was right in the middle. So, I mean, if, that would have been that, so to speak. So, I mean, I have that in there. And of course, I protested against the bomb. And now I have grandkids. I want them to grow up and have a nice, peaceful life and, long life. I don't want them to either, die in a nuclear holocaust or, living in a post-apocalyptic hellscape, and so that's what kind of motivated me to do that. And then, and then start looking at simulation and say, hey, I've been just recently retired, and I was just casting around for something to find that's meaningful. So I started doing that. And then also besides the risk factor and stuff like that, the survival part of it too is like I saw all these prepper sites out there, and people spending $250,000 on bunkers and having a year's supply of food and enough guns to start a small war. I think no, most people A, can't afford that, B, don't have the room for that, and C, are you going to spend your entire life in your compound or your bunker? No. I mean, you have to go out and about. So I was thinking, survival for the rest of us. What if you do? You just, walking down the street and bang, the alert goes off. Then what? And so I focus on that. I mean, of course, I'm lucky. Well, a lot of people here on the West Coast, I live in earthquake territory. So I always have a little 3-day kit and a small day pack in the back of the trunk of the car. A lot of people around here do. So, I mean, kind of like based on that kind of level of preparation, what can you do? And so that sort of puts that. So I think I'm going to focus again mainly on risks and on survival. I've done a little survey since, not too many responses, but just by looking at the views I get on my videos, survival and risks seem to be the big ones. My early activism stuff, it's just like nobody cares. So, that basically it just tells me the direction I need to go. If I want to rant, I can always rant on Rumble. So that's where it's going. My challenge is, of course, is just learning how to do video editing. I have no artistic skills whatsoever, so I'm trying to use a lot of stock footage and stuff like that. I try and research as best I can because I feel there's responsibility to try and give as accurate information as possible, based on open sources, and try and minimize my throwing in my opinion in the sense unless I can pin it to something like when I start doing my "Are You Feeling Lucky" long video, and quite often I'll put sources, links to sources in some of my longer videos. Where am I finding this information?
Yeah, but I really do feel that this kind of content is missing on YouTube. So there are a couple of channels on this topic, but I would say most of the channels discuss like testing, some military aspects, or just showing pretty images of testing. But I don't really know of any channel discussing the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons, and I think there is a lot that can be done there, like similar to what I do with the simulation. You can do with the YouTube channel. So there are many publications covering different scenarios, different aspects of the humanitarian consequences. It is a very, very rich topic, and I also think that people can be very interested in it because it's personal. It's not some abstract saying. It's about them.
Yeah, definitely. Are you still there, or have you frozen up? Okay, there. Okay. For a second,
still there.
Yeah, okay. It just my screen kind of froze for a second there.
I'm still there.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know, and I want to focus on that. I mean, I did a short on nuclear famine. I'm going to do longer ones. I'm actually did a lot of short ones because I was told that that's how you get subscribers. Because I want to get enough subscribers so I can make it viable to do live streams and have answering people's questions. And also, like I don't have enough subscribers yet to even do the channel chapter markers on the video. So so I've been doing that. Yeah, there's I think
it's limited.
Yeah, or at least they've maybe just limited. Maybe it's not, because sometimes they have. But in any case, I was doing shorts, but I feel like the shorts are a good little taster. But I want to do more long form videos. More extensive, including scenario videos. Okay, taking a person through from well, you got the alert. Now what? Every step by step. How do what you can do given where you're at. And also talk about the sort of the consequences of even though someone can review some of these videos, movies are made, and as also lessons of what not to do too. Like to me, one of the most bizarre scenes was in the day after, when this that Minuteman site guard, the Air Force police guy, just goes schlepping through fallout. You think he would have been trained to know better. You don't go schlepping through fallout. When you just had like hundreds of ground bursts around around up through the missile fields. I mean, hello. But
it's a movie.
Yeah, it is a movie. Yeah. But yeah, I think you can have fun with that. Say, no, don't do that. There's a lesson there for you, along the way. But it's. So I guess, I want to do more like scenario-based stuff, more humanitarian consequences, like collapse of the healthcare system. Even if you don't count dealing with the casualties of the actual nuclear war, how many people who need the healthcare system? What happens if you can't get insulin anymore because there's or there's no refrigeration left for that? So what happened? Then what? There's all these consequences of it too. That you have to start looking at.
Did you look into TikTok? Did you ever think of you uploading the short videos to TikTok?
Well, I guess I could. I guess one thing at TikTok, maybe it's because when I was trying to use it also. So there's one video going, then another video going, but it was too busy. I felt like I couldn't really just stop and kind of focus on anything. I mean, it seemed to be like, so I found a little off-putting. The whole TikTok thing and the Instagram thing too. It seems like I'm trying to look at something and basically bang off and go somewhere else. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just that I need to look at some tutorials. I mean, maybe it's because of my age. I'm more of the Facebook speed rather than the TikTok speed. It shows you too far on the opposite side of the the generation gap. What you're saying.
Yeah, but it's very popular.
Very popular. Okay, maybe I can try that. Maybe look at some tutorials and stuff like that. To try and get out there a bit more. But it's still there is but the interest is building. I mean, I'm just still early days. I think I got 51 videos up now, mostly shorts, but I'll focus more on long form content now. And so, any other suggestions or anything you think would help my channel?
What kind of cutting software are you using to cut videos?
Okay, I'm using Camtasia.
Okay. So what I'm using is DaVinci Resolve, and DaVinci Resolve is free, and it's really, really good. At least that's what I find.
Yeah. Mine is left over from back when I was working and doing online training videos. I had a little contract to do a few for Pluralsight, and they wanted me to use Camtasia, so they actually subsidized it. So there it is. So it's kind of what I have. Maybe I can try something else.
Yeah, but so I don't know if it can be done in a very visual way, but I think I sent you this channel 2-minute papers. So there is this guy reviewing scientific publications on computer visualization, computer graphics, simulations, and basically digesting all this.
That would be good.
All this information, making it easier to understand for normal people. And maybe something like this can be done for publications on humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons. So there are a lot of publications.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I don't think I got that link, so if you can send it, it'd be great.
Yeah, I will. Sure.
And then I can, because I was thinking besides that also to try to summaries of some of the stuff in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists or Federation of American Scientists stuff too, to be along with other on the humanitarian side of things. But short videos like that would be great. So that's an excellent idea. I'll follow up with that.
Yeah, but in general, it looks pretty promising.
Thank you.
I really like the direction.
Like I said, but certainly I'm open to any comments to improve it because, like I said, it's early days. But and I appreciate the fact that you spend the time with me to talk about this, and and the feedback you've given me.
Oh yeah, it's sure. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So I appreciate it, and I want to support your work as best I can too by always putting in a good word for your simulator.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to chat about? Because we've been at it now for just over an hour.
I don't know, not really much. So I think we covered all the topics that I was thinking were interesting. Yeah.
And same here. So that's good. So thank you for your time, and we'll stay in touch, and
yes,
all the
definitely.
Best. Take care.
All right, then enjoy creating videos.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.